What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolve video. Alright soldiers, I am so sorry for not providing these videos this very weekend. I'm going to provide both the Runeccraft and the neutral videos today so we can go ahead and get them out of the way because we have our sister game coming out pretty soon. But stick around to the end of the video and we'll talk more about the Shadowverse Worlds Beyond news and stuff like that. But until then, let's start focusing on Shadowverse Evolve right now. Alright soldiers, in today's video we're going to be looking at the Runeccraft reveals for set 10. I know Runeccraft is really still going to look like Earthright from set 9, but there are going to be a couple cards that are going to be splashed into newer decks. I think Spellchain is going to make a recurrence. I've been hearing things of chess. I'm scared. I know people say that it's a real deck for a meme. You know, I wanted it to be a real deck, but I was just like, goodness gracious, like none of these pieces really go aligned with each other. And then when I finally build my board, my opponent literally has the answer every time to deal with every single threat card that I just played. So, you know, enough of the looking back of chess. I am indeed excited to see what these Rune set 10 cards are going to look like though. Alright, without further ado, we have our first card. We have number 0, Lincal the Fool. So she's a 2-cost 2/2. You can evolve from 1, but when she comes into play, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may reveal up to 2 Arcana spells from among them and add them to your hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. Alright, so this is a pretty decent card, especially for the Arcana spell type cards. So being able to play this on 2 and then being able to evolve it in the same turn, especially if you're going second, is very helpful, especially if your opponent's going to be playing lower to the ground. But you being able to search for 2 Arcana spells from the top 5 is not bad as early as turn 2. Alright, and then we have the Fool evolve, so she turns to a 3/3, and whenever you play an Arcana spell, select an enemy following the field and deal it 3 damage. Alright, so kind of like a Vania / Orcus effect, where if you're going to be doing what your game plan is using Arcana spells, you're going to be selecting enemy followers on the field and dealing a 3 damage while you're playing your spells. Alrighty, next up we have Rune Resolute Diviner. So she's a 2-cost 1/1, but when she comes into play, we can select up to 1 enemy follower on the field, and then Spellchain 5, we deal it 3 damage. And if we have Spellchain 10, we deal 2 damage to each enemy leader, and then give our leader +2 defense. And then we have Spellchain 15, we put each Rune Resolute Diviner from our cemetery into our EX area. And then if we have Spellchain 20, we give each Rune Resolute Diviner on our field and in our EX area +2/+2. Alright, so a little rundown of the abilities here. I personally like the Spellchain 10 because that's where we usually want to be at with Spellchain, is the 10 spells in Cemetery, so we can get the most out of our abilities. So we have the Spellchain 5 that's going to deal 3 damage to a follower. That's not too crazy, it's pretty nice. We have the Spellchain 10 that's going to deal damage to the enemy leader, which can definitely come in handy while also healing us for 2. The Spellchain 15 and 20, however, are going to be like the late game options, but I think these are things you can definitely go for if you're running out of options. So having the Spellchain 15 is going to put all the Rune Resolute Diviners, all these cards from our cemetery, into the EX area. And then we have the Spellchain 20, which is going to buff them all by +2/+2, no matter how many stats they have, but they're all going to turn into 3/3s from on the field and in the EX area. Alright, so a little insight on the card. I do really like the idea of it, especially when you get into the Spellchain 15 and Spellchain 20 and then having a bigger stat line on the field. So dealing 6 damage to your enemy leader while healing for 6 is something that's nice, but you have to remind yourself that you have to spend a total of 6 play points and then have those 15 spells in Cemetery to really get everything off. Alright, but next up we have Imperator of Magic. So he's a 5-cost 1/1. You can evolve him from 1, but when he comes into play, you search your deck for a Golem follower that costs 6 play points or less, summon it, then shuffle your deck. Alright, so I think this is a little bit of an Earthright card here, just to being able to search for a Golem follower that costs 6 play points or less and summon it, and you can get your Fanfare ability. So this is a card that can essentially get Mithril Golem if you need it. Now, honestly, in my playtesting, in my past, Mithril Golem will always be in my hand when I don't need it. So if you are able to play a card that just gets any Golem follower 6 play points or less, and then they get their Fanfare, last words, whatever you need to do, I think there's lots of options to look for Golem followers to play. Alright, so looking at the Imperator Evolve, so it turns into a 2/2, but on Evolve you select a Golem follower on your field and you give it Rush and a Sail. So I think the best golem that you can get off of this card is Hulking Giant right now, just because you have the Fanfare Earthright to deal 5 damage to an enemy follower, and then giving him the Rush and Assail so he can swing into somebody for 5 as well. You can easily take care of one singular follower if you need to, or you can space it out and take care of 2 big followers. That'll really be a hassle. And then you also get the last words if you do some trading with the Hulking Giant to deal 3 damage to the enemy leader. Alrighty, next up we have Checkmate, so it's a 3-cost spell, so you can activate and banish this card from your cemetery. You give a Mystic King on your field Storm. Then you can spend the 3 play points to deal X damage to each enemy follower on the field equal to the number of chess cards in your cemetery. Alright, so we're finally cooking with some chess here. It's been quite some time. I've been dunking on this deck, and I want it to be decent. I want every rune deck to be playable. I just love Runeccraft for what it does, spells and everything. I've been saying this since the beginning of the channel. I'm glad that they finally can give something Storm, because my biggest wish list, well, at least honestly, my biggest wish was I wanted the Knight to get Storm, but the Mystic King getting Storm is even better because you play all the cards out of your cemetery, and it's like, okay, well, I did all of this, and what did it really do me? I obtained the value of a board, but you know, the amount of play points that I had to commit into it, the very next turn my opponent's going to have the answer to clear my board and deal with every single card on my field. So I'm very glad that they gave the Mystic King some Storm here. Alright, and then we have the actual application of the spell card. So of course we had Check, which is a very nice card to start looking for chess pieces, but the amount of chess cards that we're going to have in our cemetery for trading in value and just doing the best that we can by using spell cards, you know, magical pawns and stuff like that to spawn different uses of value, we're going to have enough damage on board to really be handling when our opponent goes wide. Alrighty, next up we have Scourge of Omniscience. So it's a 1-cost spell. At the start of your end phase, if this card is in your EX area, deal 1 damage each enemy leader. And this card can't be played from EX area, deal 2 damage each enemy leader. If there's a Linkle the Fool on your field, put this card into your EX area. Alright, so with the Linkle Fanfare, this is one of the cards you can be getting while also using the 1 play point to go ahead and evolve her. So this card can deal 3 damage to enemy follower while also you spending 1 to deal 2 damage to the enemy leader. And this card will then go into the EX area and it will continuously ping the enemy leader for 1. Alright, next up we have Juggling Magi. So he's a 1-cost 1/1. You can evolve him for 1, but when he comes into play, you can spend 4 play points to Earthright to select an enemy following field that costs 4 play points or less and banish it. I do think this is a very cute card in terms of being able to banish something. We did have a Earthright card that cost 5. I think it was the Banishing Witch that's able to use Earthright to banish. She has bigger stats lines and she's a bigger card, but I think this has its practical use as just 1, and you can evolve her for 1 to probably swing in for the early game if you're not going up against maybe the matchup where you need to get rid of something through banishing. Alright, so looking at Magi evolve, so he turns into a 2/2, but last word, so when he dies, you summon a magic sediment token, then you add 1 stack to your field. Alright, so this card is very nice. I will say I think Mad Rabbit Mage is still pretty nice just because it has a good stat line and it helps you get those Earthright cards. But if you do need the application of removing something on the unevolved side and banishing something in terms of denying someone's last words, I think it's very helpful with the evolve here and getting those magic sediment tokens and then adding stacks to them. Alright, so next up we have Gambit. So it's a 2-cost spell. You summon a magical pawn token, you give a +1 attack and rush. Then if you have at least 5 chess cards in your cemetery, you search your deck for a chess follower that costs 4 play points or less and you summon it, then you shuffle your deck. Alright, so for 2, we're going to be summoning a magical pawn token that's going to be a 3/1 with rush so we can swing into our opponent's cards. But if we have at least 5 chess cards in our cemetery, we can choose any chess follower that costs 4 play points or less and then summon it, and then they're going to get their fanfares, and if we have the extra play points, we can evolve it, that being either the queen or the knight or anything like that. Any of those cards that we might need in the potential, you know, scenario that we might be having for chess, because when they keep printing chess cards, this archetype's definitely going to be good. If they keep printing support for it, it'll eventually be good. Alright, so next up we have Rite of the Ignorant. So it's a 1-cost spell, so at the start of your end phase, if this card is in your EX area, you draw a card, then you discard a card. This card can't be played from your EX area, but you give your leader +2 defense, and if there is a Linkle the Fool on your field, put this card into your EX area. Alright, so the Arcana deck does look a little interesting here. Just because you play the Linkle the Fool, you're going to look at the top 5, you're going to want to look for the Rite of the Ignorance and, you know, the Rite of the Omniscience, and you're going to want to play those cards in the same turn while also having the Evolve for the Fool to deal 3 damage to enemy followers, you know, whenever you play cards like this. So I think it's very helpful that those cards go in tandem with each other. And also I'm liking how these cards are going to be generating value after they're played in the EX area, so you're going to be drawing and discarding, so you're going to be filtering your hand pretty nicely, while also using the active spells to like heal you for 2, or to, you know, deal 2 damage to the enemy leader, and then they sit in the EX area and then they just generally like just gain value while your opponent can't really interact with these cards. Alright, next up we have Potion Wizard. So it's a 5 cost 4/4. You can evolve him for 1, but when he comes into play, you draw a card. Alright, so it seems like a little bit of an expensive card to be drawing a card, but let's see what his evolve does. Alright, so looking at the Wizard evolve, so he turns it to a 5/5, but on evolve you choose one of the following. You can either 1, discard a Runeccraft card and give your leader +5 defense, or 2, discard a non-Runeccraft card and you select any follow on the field and deal it 5 damage. Alright, so I can see the different applications when it comes to this card, because in Runeccraft, where we are the weakest is the early game, so of course we're going to get damage stolen from us, so being able to heal the 5 to recover the oopsie mistakes that we had in the early game is very nice, while also being able to use this evolve follower to run into those followers that, you know, were probably messing with us. So healing is very nice, while also not discarding a rune card is going to be helpful to getting rid of 2 cards if you need to. If you are running neutrals in your deck, which, you know, if we're playing Runeccraft, there's going to be surely some surefire bullets and stuff like that to really help us out. But you can go ahead and get rid of one of those cards and then putting them into the cemetery while dealing 5 damage to any follower, and then using this evolve to swing into another follower if you need to. Alrighty, next up we have Creative Conjurer, so it's a 2 cost 2/3. When it comes into play, you can choose one of the following. You can either 1, add 1 to a stack on your field, or you can 2, use the Earthright to deal 2 damage to each enemy leader. Alright, so I'm liking that the Arcana stuff does have low to the ground things, so we can go ahead and start generating our stacks on our field, because I think the Arcana deck wants to use Earthright, you know, applications as well, while using the stacks and adding stacks to it, and then using Earthright for different abilities, and using golems, so I'm thinking that's how Arcana wants to be played. Alright, next up we have Arcane Auteur, so she's a 4 cost 4/4. When she comes into play, you can choose one of the following. You can either 1, draw a card, or 2, select a spell in your cemetery and add it to your hand. Alright, so I honestly think this is a good budget version of getting a spell from your cemetery to your hand. Of course, we know we have Agnes, but Agnes isn't a mage, and I think this will go decently in the mage deck, but I think we need a mage that makes like mages like cost less, like maybe like 1 less. Maybe I'm missing a card, maybe you guys know. I'm not very like, I want to cook with the mage deck, don't get me wrong. I really want it to be really good, but I think there's just too many, like it's either too follower heavy or too, you know, you really want to get to the late game rail, and there's just a lot of mages that don't really help out with the game plan of what rail wants to do. Alright, so next up we have Skewer, so it's a 3 cost spell. You can choose one of the following, and if you have at least 5 chest cards in your cemetery, you can choose up to 2 instead. So 1, each opponent buries a follower, or 2, give your leader +3 defense, or 3, you draw 2 cards. Alright, so of course Merlin is going to be a GOAT card in our chest deck, so being able to search this card out is very helpful, especially if your opponent's playing like a 1-to-1 deck. So being able to use this card to just either bury a follower that your opponent's using, or giving your leader +3 defense, or drawing 2 cards. And then of course, you know, with Merlin being what Merlin is, we can evolve it and then using it later on in the game. We just do have to make sure that if we do have only 5 chest cards and we do Merlin, this isn't going to count as the 5th chest card, because we are going to be playing it, and then there will only be 5 cards in the 4 cards that are chest cards in the cemetery when we're using this card from cemetery. Alrighty, and then lastly we have Magical Augmentation, so it's a 1 cost spell card, so you can select the enemy following the field and deal it 2 damage, and then if we have Earthright 2, you can deal 4 damage instead and then draw a card. Alright, so one of the many problems that I did have in the Earthright deck was the fact that I would have so many stacks, and sometimes there were just nothing I can do with them. Of course, now with the Earthright deck and all the applications that you can use Earthright for, that being, you know, the Ceridwen, the Faust, and, you know, different other stuff, like there's some instances, small instances of course, where you're going to be stuck with a whole bunch of Earthright stacks on 1 card. So I think Magical Augmentation is not something bad to look at, especially when you're dealing 4 damage to something while also getting a card into your hand. Alright, so here are all the rune cards that you can get out of set 10 from either box toppers or out of your pack. So we have the Lashena Leader, which I know myself I would be looking towards, you know, getting, because Lashena is definitely very popular. I enjoy her deck and her idolatry things that she does. Alright, and then we have the UR Linka the Fool. So if you're going to be running the Arcana deck, this is what the UR looks like. I kind of like how it looks. Don't really know what really to say else about it, because there were there weren't really that many Arcana cards in this set, and Arcana is like kind of like the focus. Alright, and then lastly we have Rayo. So if you're looking for your omens, they are going to be in this set just like the other classes and everything. So if you're looking towards Rune and getting either Lashena or Rayo, I hope you're able to pull those leader cards. Alright soldiers, and that was it for all of the reveals for Runecraft. So we have done all the crafts for set 10. Set 10 is going to be here this Friday. I hope everyone is looking forward to all the cards that they're going to be opening from their packs and their boxes, if they're still, you know, really getting the Shadowverse Evolve. But of course, we have bigger news to talk about the game that drops tomorrow. Alright, so Shadowverse Worlds Beyond drops tomorrow, everyone. So I want to give a huge shout out to the artist of this art, Ed Hume, who was been awesome in these like little pictures that I've been seeing for Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. Of course, what would I be as a content creator if I didn't make any content on the game? Of course, I will be giving an honest review on the game. I cannot wait to play it tomorrow. I'm still having ups and downs on if I'm going to stream it or not. I honestly will be streaming. If I do stream it, it's going to be on YouTube. I don't think it'll be on Twitch. I don't think everything's just going to be working out with me and Twitch and everything. I might still try it in the future, who's to say, but I really do want to experience Worlds Beyond with everybody at the same time. So if you aren't busy tomorrow, I probably will be streaming the game, so, you know, pop into the stream, you know, say hi, you know, tell me how your Worlds Beyond experience is going. But of course, I will be trying my best to grind the Rune game out for Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. And of course, I'm not going to forget our roots here. Of course, we're still going to be talking about Shadowverse Evolve, all the reveals, all the deck breakdowns and stuff like that, of course, but we will be doing deck profiles for Worlds Beyond as well, and just check out for the videos when they're separated the best I can. I'm looking forward to formatting the thumbnails to be very different so you can tell between a Shadowverse Evolve video versus a Shadowverse Worlds Beyond video. I'm looking into like different art styles here, and I'm doing my best brainstorming, so be patient with me if it takes a little bit of time for the first Worlds Beyond video to drop. But yeah, outside of that, we're still going to be doing Shadowverse Evolve stuff. We're going to be doing deck profiles for Shadowverse Evolve, and we're going to be doing the same thing for Worlds Beyond. So I guess you could say we're going to be on a little bit of a grind this next couple of weeks. But that's enough of the updates. We still have the neutral videos to drop here, so I'm going to go ahead and drop the Rune video for you guys, and then right after a little bit I'll be doing the neutrals, so look out for that video when this one is done. But alright soldiers, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you watching the reveals with me. Make sure you are safe in whatever you do tonight, and safe wherever you do for the rest of the year. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Yeah. TRINN. Just to get you away. What I got to do, what I got to do. Just to get you away. What I got to do, what I got to do.